it's my great pleasure today to moderate a panel called Sustainable Production, Sustainability in Physical Production. I think I've done this panel. This is my third year. And we're always learning something. So what the interesting thing is that we haven't hit our peak yet. You know, there's still work to do and discussions to be had. So I'm going to invite the speakers up here one by one. Shannon Bart, who's a sustainability director from NBC Universal, where she's responsible for overseeing the sustainable production program as well as sustainability initiatives on the Universal lot. Welcome, Shannon. Hans Dale, our location manager here in Vancouver. He started his work spurred by his immigrant father's love for the golden age of cinema. That's in your bio here. I love that. And he's worked on many productions and is a member of the Directors Guild and the Location Managers Guild. Welcome, Hans. Clara George, producer we saw in our video here. Clara is a Vancouver-based producer, sustainable production advocate and change maker, and a Real Green ambassador. Hi, Clara. Casey Nelson-Zutter, production manager, and has worked on little shows like The X-Files. So, hello, Casey. Keith Woods, gaffer and lighting designer, also based here in Vancouver, working in both feature film and television production. And he can tell us all about Ryan Reynolds because he's worked on Deadpool. Excellent. So we've got a very prestigious group of people here. This is very long right here. Hello. Yes, exactly. We have no borders when it comes to Real Green. So you all represent different departments and perspectives within the industry. So I was wondering if you could take 5 minutes to tell us what sustainable production means to you and what your approach is in your daily work. So why don't we start with you, Clara?
Okay, we're going to start with Shannon.
Oh, Shannon. Okay.
It's okay. No, I'm fine. Hi, I'm Clara. I'm a producer here in Vancouver. I think sustainability is, as was said earlier, it's everything. It's environmental, it's better working hours, it's better food, better quality just of life for all of us in this business. I think we've all been doing this long enough that there's got to be a better way. We don't want to be exhausted. We don't want to be destroying the planet. We're very lucky to have this business and it's up to us to find a solution because that's what we do. We put our minds to anything. You know, somebody comes in with a script that's impossible to shoot, and it's our job to figure out how to make it happen. And this is our job to figure out how to make our productions completely sustainable.
Thank you. We're going to mix it up. Hans, from a locations manager?
Well, I'm a location manager. I've had a very amazing run. I couldn't have asked for a better apprenticeship than working in Vancouver. I'm sure that if anyone that's come from somewhere else to work in Vancouver and sees the opportunities here, you're getting the best teachers ever when you live and work here. So I've had a great run, but more than anything, how sustainability works for me is also beyond just what's so inspirational from our speaker earlier, as well as everything that Real Green does. There's also just like Christina was saying about the human factor. Sustaining our craft and our art form with people is a big part of what drives me every day. Obviously, in locations, we're dealing with the real world, so we get the opportunity to get that feedback instantly all the time from people about what we do in physical production, in filmmaking, in the craft and art of making movies and television. And a big part of that in BC is being responsible to the environment. So that's become a bit of a driving force for me, at least in that side of it. And the way that I, in a very small way, can do it, because I'm very much a grunt on the ground, is just by aiming for that 1% of change that I can make, whether it's with reducing a footprint of production or reminding or inspiring crew, my department. I have a lot of people, young people that work with me every day. So to tell them, just be mindful of not contaminating your recyclables with different things. If they throw that into a bag and it's the wrong bag or the wrong container, that's really not helping the cause. So yeah, that's basically my world.
Thank you, Hans. And I think, British Columbia is, it's in our DNA in this province, right? It's in so much of what we do on a daily basis that it's, I was very shocked in the video when you see that the film industry at one point was, so bad on the list of, carbon polluters.
Yeah, I would say, like, for me, the other side of being a location manager is a creative thing. And the resource that we have, our natural resource, is our greatest asset as a film center. So the privilege that I've had of going into places that like Tofino and really going out on a boat and in helicopters and seeing the landscape the way I've seen it lends itself to a whole appreciation that I feel privileged to have had the chance to do already. Mm-hmm. And I want to celebrate it, and I do want to preserve it, obviously, and sustain it.
Yes. Shannon, you've been on this panel before. Over the years, the first year. So what is, tell us what you do as, running a major lot for a large studio.
Well, in my work, I oversee our sustainable production program, which is implemented on about 75 TV and film productions a year all over North America and the world. And I think that sustainability means different things on different productions as well as in the city that you're in. Thank you so much for having me back. Vancouver is one of our favorite places to make our productions from a sustainability standpoint because you're honestly so far ahead of many of the other cities where we film. I think on the very first panel, a question was asked of myself and my studio peers, what's the one thing Vancouver is behind in? And we all said in unison, food donations. And in less than 2 years, you have productions donating food. Kelsey's started a program, and it's amazing. Like, you have such an incredibly active community, and you take something and run with it. So you're doing an amazing job here. What we found is really important is measuring your impact, and we can get into that a little bit later, maybe further. But sustainability on a film and TV production might have a different focus depending on what your production's impact is. If your production is on location every single day, you might really focus on your waste and where you can tie in. If you're primarily on stage or you're building a lot, you're going to focus on how can we reuse more materials, how can we make sure we're purchasing FSC certified Luan and other woods. So it's really can look different depending on what is happening on your production. Mm-hmm. But the main things are everything that was shown in your Real Green video, which I have to say is absolutely phenomenal. I've never seen that before. And the 10 things that were listed really kind of cover a lot of what we need to be focusing on.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. Casey, you're working on a big show right now, and certainly the X-Files was one of the pioneers in really implementing Real Green across the production.
Yes, thank you. Hey, everyone. I wanted to just start by saying I've been in the industry in Vancouver for 20 years. I spent most of my time up until being in production management in the locations department. And I was, started as a PA. We did not have a great record, as I remember. We everything went to the garbage bin. The culture around recycling and reusing was not instilled as well as it certainly is now. So before anything else, I just want to say the culture is shifting, and the knowledge of all the participants, all the crew members, all the suppliers is so high compared to where it was at the beginning of my career. It's been eye-opening. We touched on the X-Files. We had the opportunity with Zena's help to begin our food donation program. And it was something that when Chris Carter learned about, he was like over the moon about the idea. And then it was in one of our production meetings, Zena was able to kick off the meeting by bringing in kind of like a firsthand account from one of the shelters that received the donations, and it was like the whole room was so moved. So that human component that was touched on earlier. So I think that it really makes it easy to buy in. So thanks.
Yeah, thank you. So Keith, what does sustainable production mean to you?
Hi, I'm Keith. I'm a gaffer. I'm the nuts and bolts person who makes their lives hell. I'm also, you're welcome anytime. And I'm also the guy who tends to make the footprint larger. I'm the guy who burns lots of diesel fuel, although not as much as usual. And also, I'm really happy I'm at the end here, because when the pitchforks and torches come out, I'll be able to make a quick escape. I think I see things a little bit differently than everyone else. I'm probably a bit more the contrarian in the panel, because there's certain things that people are all gung-ho about, and I see the other side. Because I'm the guy that has to walk around, or put his crew walking around with already a tool belt and then a whole bunch of other things. So but we'll leave that till we get going, because I'm not necessarily a fan of getting rid of plastic bottles, because we've replaced them with a paper cup. So now we got something that's recyclable, and we've replaced it with something that goes in the garbage. Because most of us who are on set already have 5 or 10 pounds sometimes on our belt, and now we're putting 2 pounds of water. And that can get caught, and it becomes dangerous and unsafe. So there's other sides to some of this stuff. So I might be the person doing that. Not that I'm not against sustainability. I'm what they call a Trinity Power Client Zero. The first big Trinity Power system was built for me on a production I did about 18 or 19 years ago. And that just started their influx into the industry, which has been great, because we've eliminated a lot of diesel generators at a lot of our sound stages around the city. And we can tag in, and Vancouver Film Studios has extra power we can get into at times and things like that. So that's where I'm going, is trying to reduce the footprint of diesel fuel, and using less, I guess, is the better way to go of everything.
I think Client Zero is the new series somebody's going to be pitching at some VIFF panel. I think that's great, though, Keith, because I think that is part of what we want to talk a little bit about today, is where do we need to come up with better solutions that are both, practical and easy to implement, and getting, your crews on board who are working on tight deadlines and have to get things done sometimes fairly quickly, and safety is of the utmost importance. So I'm glad that you are the contrarian, as you self-described. So let's talk about a few practical examples of what is happening on some of your shows. Shannon, you mentioned the accounting side that we don't always think about. But what do you mean by that?
We've heard about BAFTA's Albert, which is an amazing tool to measure your carbon footprint. And in the US, the major studios had gotten together years ago, maybe 2010, 2011, and developed an Excel spreadsheet carbon calculator, which has evolved a bit and we now call PAIR. It's available for free on greenproductionguide.com, which is a website that is a joint effort of the major studios with the PGA. But what that tool does is it kind of shows you how to measure the carbon footprint of your production. And we've been measuring for years and years, and fuel is the number one source of carbon emissions. I would say across the board, it's at least 50% on almost every single production we've measured. So when you measure something, you can manage it better. And just this last season, we've now made it mandatory on every single TV production. We've been doing it on film for years, but it was hard to kind of get in. We have so many TV shows to do that. And measuring on TV has already resulted in real time, Clara, which I'll let her talk about later, like really actually seeing in real time the reductions that some actions can make. And once you see those reductions, it only continues to inspire you to do more. Right now, we're using our measuring to, for example, it had been voluntary on a number of TV shows for a while, and we would show them their impact from season 1, and when they came back to season 2, they would say, "Oh my gosh, look at what look at how much paper we use, look at how many water bottles we use, look at our fuel usage. Let's focus on this season. And I've seen productions who, because of that report from the previous season, have taken actions and reduced by significant numbers the second season. So some of the things that I hear is like, I thought we did really good on paper. I cannot believe that that's how much we used. Or I thought we did really good on this. I can't believe that that was ended up being. So it's kind of like dieting, or if you're counting calories, or if you're doing something like you think you're doing great until you actually start writing it down. And then it kind of bubbles to the surface what you do. And I want to tell one more story because Keith, I feel like you had a challenge here.
Okay.
So this is a little story about measuring. I think about 4 or 5 years ago, NBC Universal had created some LED lighting, but there was some adoption, but it wasn't maybe getting adopted as fast as it possibly could. And so I wanted to know, like, how much of our LED lighting are we actually using? So just for TV shows on the Universal Studios lot, because we had a lot of control, they had to rent lights from our set lighting department. We could really dive into the numbers. And so we counted out like on a fixture basis, like what percentage of our lighting package was LED. And then share that with executives. And our head of television production was like, we can do better. And he said, I demand that you schedule a meeting with every single gaffer and DP on every single show coming up with me. And so I forced these meetings that people did not want to have, with the gaffers, the DPs, the line producers, and our head of physical production. And it was basically a meeting of us telling our gaffers that they had to use as much LED lights as they possibly could. And I think some of them were really excited and open to it, and some of them were like, "You've got to be kidding me! This is my baby. I'm the specialist. I light the shows." And but the result was, in one season, we tripled the amount of LED set lighting, and a lot of the skeptics became believers, and we got a lot of very good feedback on how to make the lights better. And so now there's a new line of LED set lighting. But now, like, we were able to quadruple the amount of LED set lighting fixtures in 4 years, which I take a little credit for, but mostly, like, it's just like, I think the technology is better and people love using them as well. So I think it was one of these things that, like, people wanted to, and it's almost like they got studio permission to do it as well. But it was this giving the metric to the people in charge that gave permission to maybe spend a little bit more in their lighting package so that they could get the lights.
Can you do that on my next show? I'm starting a GEP show right now.
Yes, yes, we can. Let's talk. But I would love to hear from you is like, what are the hurdles of LED set lighting, and how do you get over that to keep using them? Because I believe that you like using them. Is that right?
A friend of mine, director of photography, I met through Area Lighting in a symposium I went to a couple of years ago. Was at a symposium that Russell Carpenter put on. Russell called me a sky panel addict, which is, sky panel is the new fixture from, well, not so new anymore, from Airy. That's the one I talk about in the film. It draws 5 amps. It has the output. It competes with a 6,000 watt fixture, which is 50 amps. So it's great. On a Disney film that I'm not allowed to really talk about very much because of an NDA, and it won't come out until 2019 on their streaming service. So none of us in Canada can see it, which is wonderful. But our circus drew more power than all 3 of our sound stages combined, because all we were using was LED. I was in a studios at Van Film, where the last time I was in there, stage we had G, H, I, and J3. This one we had G, H, and I, and each stage fed back to each other, and then we had 12 more switches, 12 more generators of power, and because of the tungsten we're using. So that's the kind of stuff we're doing there. The problem we encounter is that we have large Fresnel fixtures that are tungsten or HMI that can throw a city block. There is no comparable LED fixture, period.
Yet.
And probably will not be until hopefully before I retire, because I want to play with it. But I'm doubtful. There are a couple of fixtures we used on this unnamed Disney production called Noel. That we went to Whistler, created a village. We created the North Pole, and we got some fixtures that are designed to light football stadiums that are single color LED. that are color corrected. They're wonderful. Watch a LA Galaxy game. You get to see them chasing and doing really cool things. And they're wonderful. They're 5 amps. They use these fixtures to replace 1,500 watt metal halide fixtures. 315 metal halides became 380 LED. Those LEDs draw probably, a tenth or less of what the metal halides did. So that stuff's great. But and then there's the stuff from that you guys have, the light blades you got from Cineo. Those are cool. They're really great. They have their place. But right now, if you want a light to push halfway across the room or halfway across the street, it ain't LED. And that's just the facts. There's nothing we can do about it. But I love them. I love the Sky Panel. It's unbelievable what it can do. And it's made my life wonderful and hellish at the same time.
Well, it trickles down into locations.
Well, I was going to interject, but I didn't want to stop his eloquence there. But about
You're so kind.
the technical eloquence was that's what we're sometimes scared of too, is the technical question. Can we make that choice? And that's the choice sometimes. I mean, the comparison that he made was that they were drawing less power on set than they were from their support vehicles in their circus. And so that's where for us,
that's also because all the vehicles were from Southern California. So Southern California vehicles use electric heat. The old school ones that we have here in Vancouver are heated by propane. So there's a trade-off, but electric heat makes your electrical consumption go through the roof. So that's why we're drawing more. If it had been the old school Canadian ones with propane, we probably would have been on par.
and it goes, to that point, when we do talk about any fuel consumption, whether it's propane or if it's electric heat, then that's a bigger problem, of course. But that's the kind of thing that we can try to create boundaries for, or that's part of our function, is to translate boundaries from the world for production. And some of that is saying, hey, do we really need to have that? Do we really need to carry that piece of equipment? Do we really need to put that at work 3 hours prior? Is there a way to be more clever? And that's the only way for us to influence what the impact is, not just environmentally, but also physically, just in the space that we're in.
So it all goes hand in hand, right? I think that's what's demonstrating what you're all demonstrating, is that there isn't just one component to it. So Clara, you are a real green ambassador. So as a producer, when you are, a project is kicking off, or even as you're in the early stages of it, what are you thinking about, and what are you actually doing at that, or even those early stages, when all these questions are still out there?
I had a really great opportunity on this year, because I took over a show that had already been established. I came on to Magicians in season 4, and I started by walking in going, okay, so you guys know what show you're making. I don't have to figure that out. You've got something going. I want this to be the most sustainable production we can do. I want to try everything. So I met with all the department heads. Shannon and her partner Kim walked us through the mandatory meetings. And then we kind of all sat around and we said, well, what can we do? And I used the carbon literacy training and stuff and said, okay, fuel's our number one. And they said, well, we have a problem because our stages run off diesel generators. And I'm like, what are you talking about? What do you mean? And, oh yeah, no, we're out at a facility. It's a converted warehouse. It's all diesel generator run. I went, well, we need hydro. We need to pull it in. Well, we tried. Well, are you sure? And I called Keith, and Keith said, oh yeah, no, that's all diesel generators. And I
said most partially. There was more power than she was led to believe before she went the next step.
So Keith said, yes, you have to run generators there. There isn't enough power for 4 or 5 sets. And everybody who worked on the show said, yeah, we tried. We have to move hydro wires. We have to do this. We have to do that. So I called Julie and Zena, and I went, I need someone at BC Hydro. I need to know what's going on. And they called me back, and he called me back, and he was totally, I don't know what's going on, but you guys are at 20% consumption historically in the building. You've never tapped your power. And I'm like, well, okay. So I called in the rigging gaffer and the Jenny op, and I went, we haven't tapped power. And he goes, no, we've tapped all our power. And there wasn't enough switches. So we had the power, we didn't have the switches. So we got the switches put in, and we converted the entire facility to electric, to hydro. So we went from burning 4 generators a day to none on the show this season. And that, we also put in a no idling policy. We rented all hybrids from Driveforce, and we switched over our main vehicles from gas to diesel for better consumption. And we're 20% down in fuel from last season, which is over 20,000 liters of fuel so far. And we're not done yet.
And the cost savings.
Oh,
around
and the cost,
it, you
yeah.
know, I mean, ultimately,
my
that's-
accountant's like, I have never seen the gas account be under. Like, we're under it. We have not gone over our fuel allowance. Have you ever
Yeah.
seen that? Like, no.
Never.
That is amazing. Yeah.
Like, we are so below
Yeah.
our fuel allowance. It's crazy. And
Wow.
everybody's on board. And when we started this, we thought, well, what if we save 1%? Well, we're at 20%. So it's like
Congratulations,
we were just going for a little bit of a difference. Now, our show was easy because we had a big problem. We weren't at a facility that was already hydro-based and all that sort of stuff. So we were able to make that big impact. But that's not all of our 20% coming from that studio. I mean, I think everything else we've done has made a huge impact too.
So, you know, that really shows the importance of leadership and the tenacity. You know, as a producer, you have many other things you're worrying about in addition to this. But that is why the leadership is so important in
they have
these
to listen to
initiatives.
me.
You have to, and you know, again, like somebody who's going to keep at it, like yourself. You're wanting
Yes,
to
I just want to say that I have shot that facility and have gone down the same path that Clara went down, but I didn't have the support from above to take it further, find hydro, sort that stuff out, and also there's a whole thing too where I start quite a bit later often and don't have the time. Okay, I start a month out and we got to go to camera, and it's going to take 6 weeks. Well, then by then, you know, the horse has left the barn often and you can't get there, or maybe you try and back up. Although I only did burn 1 generator when I was at that stage. Yeah. But the thing is,
I've
too,
seen
is
you burn more.
Oh yeah. No, don't forget. Like I said last year, 10,000 liters of fuel on Earth Day. The whole
You've just
thing.
got the best movie titles coming out. It's like,
But the thing is, though, is that you go to facilities like the one that Creative forced me to do that, where we were forced into signing a document that made legendary Universal have to take full responsibility for anything that occurred. So we had to walk away from hydro. We didn't have a choice. The option was, if the building's burned to the ground, we're on the hook, or we burn diesel generators. It's just that simple. You can't take that liability. But you have to, the leadership from above, the support, most of it's there. There's quite a few. I mean, Warren up there is great for that kind of stuff. And Clara's running with it as well. And some of the PMs and producers are doing that. But part of that is bringing in nuts and bolts guys like me earlier so we can find that. And then also, when I come up and say, hey, it's going to cost $35,000 for 6 weeks to do this, and then going, but we're going to save $10,000 or $20,000. Someone saying, okay, fine, or someone, kicking me in the ass out of the room. And often that's what occurs.
Well, we're going to break even. I mean, we knew it cost us $50,000 to put in the switches. We're trying to get the landlord to put them in permanently. We're only renting them while we're in production. But, I went to my production executive at Universal and said, this is what I'm doing. And they kind of went, you're going to spend $50,000 and you don't know how much fuel you're going to save? And I'm like, yep. And we've saved, and we're even, right? We're going to end up even. So,
and tracking that and sharing that information helps to educate for the next production. So you can start to say, yes, it's worth the investment now. And having the examples like what you're going to be able to show at the end is something that then I can use both here and other cities too.
And I would add too, from the locations perspective, and I know the Gaggle from Creative BC that all work with you, they're making huge inroads with all the authorities that have jurisdiction by having these types of forums and these conversations in their visibility. Then they start to see, oh, we need to shorten or reduce our turnaround time. 6 weeks. 6 weeks for BC Hydro is crazy. Short.
That's insane.
that panel is
that's
later today. Yes.
Yeah,
And I'm sure they'll
absolutely insane.
Sorry, they will be talking about it.
No, but that is it's a valid point. It's all of these.
They need
parts.
to also come on board and say, oh, we're trying to do something novel with consumption or sustainability. Let's reduce the timeline, and they can do it.
Casey, from your perspective, you've worked on a few productions now where this has been a priority. How do you bring the crew on board? You know, from the practicalities of what, you know, Keith was talking about, it's like, it's just not practical to carry around, you know, a liter of water on your tool belt.
That's a really good question. I think you have to talk, you have to tell them what your expectations are early and set yourself up for success. You have to there has to be maintenance ongoing, and you got to hear what they're saying back at you, like what Keith says. Obviously, we're not going to put anybody in any kind of risk, obviously. I can think of a lot of occasions where crew members actually come to us to help us with making our systems better, including our recycling systems. So making sure that they know that they're part of the solution, keeping that kind of ongoing conversation going, and reacting to the ongoing kind of situation as it's unfolding. I've had crew members come up and talk to me about, initiating kind of better recycling situations, that kind of stuff, and moving that information around, and then checking in on it after. So just kind of like, again, keeping the dialogue moving, and making sure that they are contributors to it.
Yeah, you know, the one thing obviously we all know about this industry is it is hyper competitive, and I think that was one of you said it is that's one of the drivers is who can do this better than the last production. So is that something that Shannon, between you have 75 shows, is that something that actually is helping move things forward?
Yeah, I think a friendly competition similar to your Thanksgiving challenge that you have here every year can be really productive and useful. But what's really cool about sustainability is that I think at the studios we kind of see it as a pre-competitive space. We have, like, Lisa Day is here. I think we'll be hearing from Mike Slavich tomorrow from Warner Brothers. Mm-hmm. And we are very close. I almost see the sustainability departments at the other studios as my extended department. And we talk at least weekly. And we share best practices because, as freelance crew and producers, you work for different studios all the time. And we all use the same suppliers. We all use the same crew. Mm-hmm. It works in our favor to work together and to lift the whole industry up together. And that's kind of where the group that formed with undergreenproductionguide.com started. Mm-hmm. And right now we are all working together very closely, the US-based studios, to bring our somewhat clunky Excel spreadsheet tools, but they're really great, peach and pear, into the online form. So we're working on developing a software, and once we get to a certain point, we are hoping to bring in Creative BC and BAFTA and Albert and everyone to get to this place where we have online tool that is user-friendly and is familiar to everybody, so that when you're at Universal, you're not following a whole different standards than when you're at Fox or when you're at Warner Brothers. And so to answer your question, a friendly competition is really great, but we find we can accelerate sustainability in our industry by working together.
Yeah, we've certainly talked about that sort of like the LEED certified production, like a Real Green certified production, that you get that seal of approval, and that gives, and maybe from I certainly think from an audience perspective, as consumers, this is becoming more and more important, that if you're paying for a movie ticket or watching something on a, cable channel or streaming service or whatever it is, that's becoming important to us. I mean, based on, all the stuff we've already heard this morning. Hans, I'm just curious about the location manager industry or people in general, because often you're working alone, you're out there dealing with the community in different ways, and you're just trying to ensure the, getting the location you need and reporting to various people who are relying on you. That how does this become a priority for others within that locations managers community?
Well, I think once you say sustainability, you're talking about preserving something that people will come back to over and over again as well. So just by that thinking, you want to be the least impactful that you can be and still achieve your creative goals. I mean, we're showing off, and that, like I said before, the great benefit of being in BC is that we're showing off the natural beauty at least 60 to 80% of the time. That's the benefit of coming here to shoot. Sure, people want to mimic downtown Vancouver for Chicago or for whatever town that they want to, or city that they want to place it in, but people come here for the natural beauty. And to that point, I would also say that preserving older architecture or that mentality, some part of that is incumbent on location managers and production designers to creatively suggest, hey, maybe going older with your aesthetic is better than just going new and glossy. Because that mentality exists too, where we just tear things down instead of repurposing, instead of revisiting maybe a grittier look or something different. That's a part of just the culture of how people think about it anyways. And then we do want to be stewards for that too. I mean, certainly Casey, for example, or other people that you'll see later on in the other panels, they'll talk about preserving things a little bit more. And that's a part of sustainability as well too. So it does become incumbent, but it's by definition a part of the task.
Mm-hmm. And Clara, how important are the tools and the availability? You mentioned, so you've gone into a facility and you've had those switches put in. Hopefully they will stay there. But how important are those tools, like having that vendors list, or knowing that you're in a jurisdiction that actually has the facilities to be able to, take the materials? You can collect all the materials, but then where do they go?
The tools are everything. That's how we're going to get there. It's the new technology. We realized that we didn't have any hybrids in the rental pool available to the entire city on any film production. So we sent out a questionnaire to all the producers, because when we talked to the rental companies, they said, well, you're not going to pay for more. You're not going to pay an extra $100 for a hybrid vehicle. And I'm like, well, yeah, I am, because I'm going to save $150 on gas. So that makes total sense. But they didn't believe us. So we actually had a petition circulated and signed by like 75% of the producers and production managers in Vancouver. And as a community, took that to the rental car companies and said, look, we're going to do this. And so Drive Force bought 10 hybrids and put them in the pool. We have 4 of them. Man in High Castle has 2 of them. I don't know where the other ones are. They're not, but they're sold out. Like everybody's using them. So as we get to electric vehicles, electric trucks, as we work, the tools are only going to work if we talk about them, if we share them, if we know, if we change the belief that this is the only way to do it. Like the studio, like the studio I was in, everybody for 20 years thought there wasn't enough power. There was, but it wasn't the case. So I think we have to as consumers, and filmmakers, demand better technology and help it get developed, like the LED lighting, or that's a great example, or even going digital. We used to be film, right? The whole industry changed in 8 years, 10 years? Is that how long it took for the transition? So there's no reason why we can't make this industry completely carbon neutral and completely sustainable. We can have, we can demand that we don't work more than 11 shooting hours or 10 shooting hours. We can demand, right? I've done that. I've done that on with my other producer, director partners. Everyone has to buy in. The studio has to buy in. Everybody buys in. But we did it for 29 episodes of television. We worked 11 hours. We pulled the plug at 11 hours. We had 6 days that we hit 12. We had a countdown clock, and people were shamed if they went over those 11 hours. Like, it worked. We just have to make those changes, but we have to do them together. We are a giant community. There's 60,000 of us. We can have a huge impact, but we have to share what we're doing.
It is a bit shocking to me that the vehicle companies needed convincing. Like, this is their business, is understanding cars and trucks and the impact of what something costs. So it's interesting that the this industry, because other driving force as an example, this isn't the only industry that uses their services. So their trucks or whatever vehicles they're bringing in are probably becoming even more in demand, not just for this sector, but for the other sectors that they work in. Keith? Oh, sorry. No, I meant
Okay.
Go ahead.
you, Casey. You were nodding. You were.
Sorry. I just wanted to. That's awesome. I'm glad that they're investing, and it would be great to see that from all of our vehicle suppliers. I think one thing that this philosophy is actualizing is that shorter days, for example, or consuming less fuels. It's commercially viable, and there's incentives for us to, us being on the production side, to buy into this and to create those opportunities. And one example that I've seen as well too is like car rentals. Got lots of people on car rentals, incentivizing better rental rates for vehicles that are electric or hybrid. That kind of ideology, I think, is useful in creating, making everybody else buy into it. So,
Shannon, go ahead.
Well, it's amazing that you were able to get driving first to see that there's a demand. And what I didn't realize until I got here yesterday was that the hybrid vehicles I got were plug-in hybrids. So you got electric hybrid vehicles. And so while hopefully driving force will continue to double, triple, quadruple the quantity that they have in stock every year. But then at the same time, we need the studios to keep installing more and more charging stations. I've seen a few at some of the different studios, but if with production, you don't always know how far you need to drive. So I think for a while, we're going to be in the plug-in hybrid model before going maybe 100% electric for some of our positions. But having those charging stations, making sure that we can get people to plug in and only use the battery electric part of the vehicle for as much as possible means that they're literally not creating any emissions when you're here in Vancouver. You have your clean energy. So wrapping up the availability at the same time, wrapping up the infrastructure to get us to a place where we're not using any fuel.
And I was just going to interject there with a joke, but I was just going to say, isn't it great that we have great electricians too that can craftily install tie-ins to wherever we go so that our EVs can actually plug into our unit?
Like I said on that Facebook post, how clean is your Tesla when you plug it into a diesel generator?
Yeah.
I posted that after doing that very thing. But the thing too, though, is I'll point out. Sorry, what was that? I actually did it.
No, you have the mic. You keep talking.
Okay. So one thing about the charging stations of the studios, they're really cool and they're great. There's 3 near the Flash studio. The last time I drove by, it was a 4-door, 8-foot-long box dually pickup truck parked there all day. One of the ones outside Arrow, the guy who parks there drives a Ford F-150 Raptor. So they're there, but not being used very often because they haven't figured out how to deal with the parking for that yet because they've put it in someone's parking spot from the last 4 years. So it's working in some places not. The one thing that I will note, and I mean, most of what I do is trying to figure out how to reduce electricity and carbon fuels and all that kind of stuff. But I've been recycling since you had to put it in cardboard boxes and go to Kitsilano House with it from your apartment, which was like 25 years ago. That's where we were. Today, they're coming to our house. And the only way it's working with the food and the composting and all that is because people are finally dealing with it, the 3 people at the table here. We've been wanting it, but it's a cost. And finally, people are paying that cost because it's more PAs. It's all the stuff that goes along with it. We did it on the Warcraft film. It was easy. We had 3 sound stages. Going on the road was driving to another sound stage. So it was really easy to deal with, and it worked really, really well, and people caught on. They're finally catching on episodic television, which was, as you said earlier, it's the last place you go because those are the productions that maybe don't have as much money or the time because they could do 4 moves in a day. And it's kind of like, where's catering now? Okay, they're over there, and no, they're over there. So it's really, really cool. The electric cars are good. And honestly, driving force is doing it only because they've been told to. Because 4 years ago, if you went up and talked to a production manager about doing that kind of stuff, they would have laughed in your face, talking about hybrids, paying more money, because it's about we have to be honest, our industry is about bottom line. The bottom line is changing a little bit, slowly and progressively. I still fight for getting transformation into studios at times because of that cost. That is a fact of my life. I argue for those things hotly, going, it's cheaper. Well, no, we got to pay $5,000 up front. Yeah, but you're not burning $1,500 worth of fuel a day. So it saves, but you have to make those fights. And I've been doing it for, like I said, 18 years now. And it's finally starting to happen. But it's not that it hasn't been asked for by people like me. We've been fighting the bottom line. The bottom line's finally caught up.
Yeah, no, that's on so many different aspects. So many things you've said are so important there, because it is, this isn't just something that everybody woke up 3 years ago and decided, oh, this would be a good idea. And it's because of people who've been in there trying to make these changes, and then, following suit, that the major studios are certainly, in Los Angeles, you have your peers at the other studios and you're all driving this forward, but you must still come up against some of this stuff on productions.
Yeah, I mean, I think cost is always a really important factor, but I think being able to articulate that story, being able to have the numbers, going back to why tracking and measuring and sharing your successes is so important, because when you have that data and you have the information, your line producer might feel more armed with information to go to then the production executive.
We have at times had that. That's the inherent problem, is that we have had that information and we still lose because, well, it's okay. There's we've always done it this way. We're going to continue. There's a few that are obstinate and don't want to change. I mean, for every Clara, there's like 4 people that aren't interested.
Yeah. So
Right? That's
I'm
the
seeing
problem.
a
I
lot
still
of
face
more
that.
of it's the right thing to do as well. Like I think
Always
as
been the right thing.
as you right, but I think that people. I mean, how long has Real Green been really going?
well,
In
12
06.
years, but
So-
it's really the last 5 years.
The last 5 years,
that
right?
It's picked up more momentum because there is, people are recognizing the bottom line.
So it's more kind of like we heard this morning. It's like we don't really have time to just sit around anymore and like wait for it to happen. Like I think there's a sense of urgency that is hitting every single level of every single of the production. And so the great ideas you've had for 20 years are now starting to make a little bit more sense when we think about all 3 parts that come into sustainability, which is the environmental sustainability that we're mostly talking about, the social aspect, but also economic. Economic is one of the legs of the 3 triangle or the 3 legged table that make sustainability. And it's not sustainable to burn through your budget. Like you have to make the smartest decisions possible. And now that a hybrid vehicle doesn't mean a Prius that gets 40 miles to the gallon. It means a plug-in electric vehicle that may never use any gas at all. The numbers work faster. They work better, and it's easier to pencil out to get there. So I think it's a mix of producers and studios being more willing to look at the whole picture, but also the technology has caught up to a place where the payback on investment is happening faster.
Well, and the tools, like lighting is a great example, that you want to use it now if you can, right? Because it didn't give you that look that
Yeah,
you
but
wanted.
we still run into the monetary thing and having to sit down and explain why using an Airy Sky panel is cheaper. I mean, I'm still doing that. They've been out 4 years. I've got the proof, and I'm still being questioned.
I find that because I'm the one with all, like, I end up saying no because the lighting package comes in, and I think the first time we tried to convert one of the girlfriends guide stages.
That was pre-Sky panel. It was unfortunate.
Yeah.
The tungsten I did. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Anyway, when we tried to
It
convert
wasn't my idea, though. That's the problem. I get told by a DOP.
but we ended up trying to convert it, and our lighting package was quoted as 4 to 5 times what we were paying, and we just didn't have the money. So what I've learned over the years is that just like an iPhone, you don't need the 10. Like so I'll get the lighting quote, and I'm like, okay, These lights were invented 2 weeks ago. Why are they on my show? They're not going to be on my show. We're not that show. We're cable television. You know, we're gonna play with an iPhone 4, and you know what? It's gonna work, and it's gonna be fine. So that's kind of my version of
Right.
being the bad, the production guy. Is because they all hit me with the sustainability argument, which it's like the safety argument. You can't say no to. You go, oh well, this will save energy. Okay. Yeah, exactly. And then you get there, but it doesn't have to be the top of the line stuff. There's so much stuff out there. And, we reduced our beef consumption by 100 pounds. It didn't cost us a cent, and that's thousands of pounds of beef. And we've got our caterers doing it. They're doing 3 other shows. So those 4 shows are doing it. I'm, boring everyone at every gathering going, have you cut your beef yet? Have you cut your beef yet? Because it doesn't cost anything, and it's a huge impact. So it's not all financial based. There's things we can do that are.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's from my end. It is. That's why I said that what you guys are doing with all of like the beef, which I didn't know about till I saw that, because I'm not on your show.
No, but
So I wouldn't know.
You ate that catering.
You're eating hamburgers on some show somewhere. It's like,
Not often. Yeah, no, I fall asleep after a big beef meal at lunch. But the fact that the 3 of them and are talking with their people at the DGC and making it happen, that's the only way it's going to work for anything.
Yeah.
Ultimately,
I think
because they're the ones that we come and say, hey, we want this. We come cap in hand with this idea or that idea. We can prove it's cheaper. There'll be some savings somewhere along the way, but it's up to them to and buy in.
And I think what we're hearing is, sort of this 10 things you can do is that there's more complexities in some than making the decision to not serve beef or eliminate certain types of materials on your set or your production. There's different achievable things that you can do here. And some of the stuff around the tools, around lighting and the costs is more complex, but there's ways to get there.
Yeah, and I think that the quick, easy ones are, and it's simple, although there is a bit of a cost, is the 4 or 5 bins that this goes here, this goes there. It's just kind of like, ultimately, again, I got back into it again because my kids shamed me. Let's be honest, right? Anyone who's a parent's been shamed at least once by their kids about throwing something in the wrong place. And that's kind of what you have to do to a film crew because we are kids.
I remember we did Keith and I think you were on Cats and Dogs. And
that was where I was Client Zero.
Yeah, so they did a power drop at Eagle Creek and all that. But I remember the conversation about recycling bins and getting the production manager or someone to pay for more bins so that we could recycle. And we decided to just figure it out. And we came up with other bins and we recycled for the whole season. There was a PA. There was no pickup at that point. It was taking it to the recycling depot. And the PA that was responsible for collecting the bottles and cans ended up buying himself an enormous large screen TV from all the money because he decided I'm going to volunteer myself to be the guy that takes the stuff to the recycling
Entrepreneur.
depot. I think this was 99 or 2000 or something like that. And he ended up buying like a 56-inch television from the money that he made from the run of the production. So I think there's I think there's a maturity that's taken place now. It's a lot easier to absorb this kind of making that distinction between what things cost immediately versus the long term now that didn't exist in 1999 for sure.
And in 1999, you didn't have Keep It Green.
No, that's a good point.
And she was a PA. Kelsey was a PA.
Kelsey started recycling.
Were you the one
How's your TV? Yeah.
Was it your TV?
You did start on Shooter. Yeah, it was on 2006 on Shooter where Kelsey really took the ball and ran with it. So it's to that.
And I think that's the infrastructure part that you have to look at the whole community.
Yeah.
And in Kelsey, you said you work with 99 productions now. 99%. Oh, 99. Okay. So you have this infrastructure. You have an amazing hauler who came from the production industry and can set up a recycling system that works for production. And now you have the sustainable lockup. So there is no excuse to throw away a set wall now. You have, and were we Client Zero? Yeah. Yes. So like
It's a multi-episodic series.
the 50 Shades trilogy was Client Zero for the sustainable lockup, and they have a 2,000 square foot warehouse And in 2 weeks, how? 2 months? Oh, so I'll come back. But in a short period of time, they recirculated 278 tons of set materials into the creative community that did not go into a dumpster. Do I have the number right? 277, something like that. So like the fact that Xena and Kelsey with Sustainable Lockup were able to take so much storage from 3 big movies, and it didn't go into, most of it, a tiny bit had to go into the dumpster, but most of it did not, is something that we could not have done without them even 6 months prior, before you opening Sustainable Lockup. Is that right? So like having that infrastructure, having those partners really will allow you to continue to do everything you possibly can.
Yeah, and we've got the special effects guy, Mark, whose last name always escapes me, who's doing styrofoam. He's the guy that everyone sends their styrofoam to when they're doing big carving shows. Pardon me? Yeah, Marco. How can I forget that name, right? Yeah, it's the only one in the Lower Mainland. And again, I found out about that standing in the bank line up at Van City, because he got money from them that's where he got his seed money, right? So even so that's, you find the way and you get it done, and it's
well, but that is such an interesting example of somebody in the industry who saw a need and started a business, and a viable business. Like that is. That's sort of amazing. I think that's what happens within a creative community like this, is that all of these different offshoots, that it's probably not just the film production industry that is using that facility to recycle styrofoam. There's probably, there's so much of that. We're all getting, Amazon packages are arriving on daily basis full of these things for people. What's interesting, I think, for a lot of the younger, more or independent filmmakers here who may be working on smaller productions, on what they can do, because they are, certainly reusing materials and having access to materials from a facility like this is helpful to them. But what are your tips to somebody who's working on, a lower budget, maybe $150,000 film project, short film or feature film, under $1 million? What can you do? I mean, you actually probably are naturally doing things because you don't have the money to do other things, but there are other steps that maybe you're not thinking about that you can take. Any advice for folks?
Well, I've been in those shoes where I tried to do that. And the only advice that I would give to anybody that's trying to do that is that there's an enormous wealth of very, very willing suppliers and manufacturers and craftspeople in the city. And it's a huge tool. You just have to pick up the phone and ask them, and they will likely try to find a way to help a film getting made. There's lots of people here. I was lucky because I've been in the business, but I see that with lots of younger filmmakers. They'll call me and they'll say, "Hey, do you think you can help me get this project made?" And at that, we're consuming less. I always try to tell them, use what you've got, use what you know that you can have access to, instead of having highfalutin aspirations. Just stay in the world that you know, and you'll use less, and you'll have less of a footprint, and you'll be able to take advantage and tell your story in a much more confident way.
Anyone else?
Use Sustainable Lockup for your materials.
Yeah.
And also, that is the best resource.
The vendors, from a lighting standpoint, I think camera might be the same. They have, we take gel back to the vendors, scraps or partial rolls. So you're getting. So is that who Sim's sending it to? Okay, there you go. So never mind. Don't go there. Go to Kelsey. But we've been doing.
Kelsey will be around all day for anybody who wants to talk to her.
And we've been doing that. I've got like I said in the phone conversation, but there's a room somewhere in Thunder Bay with my name on it from all the tape and gel that I sent back to one of my crews, alma mater, and because it was useless. It's white in the middle and it's red everywhere else. So it's got no use to us. So instead of throwing in the garbage, it went back there and they cut it up and use it. And that's the thing I would say. Just, all the different, there's all kinds of, but call people, and everyone's willing to help.
And just say for those gels, I can't even keep them in stock.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So quickly for me.
Oh yeah, we did. I remember on
So
6th
anybody
day
else have
when
any
we were shooting-
gels? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we were doing 6th day up at SFU, and and there was like we had all this gel and all these lights and black wrap, and this really cool kids from the film school came up, and I turned around and all that stuff was gone.
I was going to
Take what
say,
you
I
want.
remember it. I remember it being a theft story, not being a.
Oh no! Actually, no. Well, I mean, what I encountered was like, he said, "Can we have this stuff?" I said, "Well, yeah, it's burned out. We can't use it." And they just take what you want. And I don't know what he did with it. It made a collage or something, or I'm not really sure.
I think young and new filmmakers are so creative, and you're like you're not tainted by, oh, this is how we have to set up our production. We have to get all these trailers and all these trucks and have all these lights and all this cable. It's like, okay, no, let's get a couple sky panels, limit our cable. We don't need generators on set. And really, like if you're a really small film, maybe you can partner with Portable Electric and try to do as much as you can on volt stacks, and like you can set a new normal for what it takes to make a really beautiful film. Like you don't need to do it the way we've been doing it forever. You have the chance to start fresh and say, I'm just not going to have any beef.
Right, and be
We're not going to have any plastics.
Yeah.
And this is the way we do it. And you could say it's because of the budget, and also it's because of sustainability.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the most amazing things I've ever seen was my son, who's now in university, when he was in high school, was in a film class. I think I've talked about it coming here. There's this, I don't know her name, I can't remember her name, but there's this young girl in Kamloops making phenomenal films with nothing. Because she's got the story and she's just out there doing with what she's got. And it's unbelievable what you can do with next to nothing.
Well, even, Zach, the director, Zach Lipovsky, I don't know if Zach's here, in the video, that he actually created an app, for himself.
That's the one thing I want, that circus technology? Yeah. That looked really cool.
Yeah.
I got to figure that. You tried it?
No, we're trying to get digital start packs up here through EP. They're not quite there yet. I think next year or two.
We use only digital start packets with EP in LA, and it's expanding throughout other US. I think they're working on it up here, but it's different forms, different government forms. So.
That's one, as you're saying, the independent shows or the lower budget things, they're going to be sustainable naturally. The challenges on the bigger shows, I mean, even with TV, I have a great excuse. I can always just say, no, we can't have the extra trailer, or we can't do 5 unit moves a day, or we can't do those things. And that helps keep us in check. I think that as an industry, as a city, we have to provide tools for the shows where it doesn't matter, where they have $200 million. They can do whatever they want. They can have these massive structures. One of the things we met with at one of the Real Green meetings was to work with the city of Vancouver as they're putting in their EV chargers to put in cam locks so that we can put the units on hydro instead of on generator power when they're in the neighborhoods. So any of the larger parking lots, which is where we would naturally park, would now become sustainable. But I think there's, I'm a firm believer that if the rules and the policies have to change, as well as while we're changing them from underneath, and they kind of have to all gel together. And I think we need to communicate with each other a lot more, because I didn't know about the styrofoam recycling. Like, I'm going to go tell my construction guys, because we have an entire styrofoam set, that now.
It may already be going there. You never know. I mean, Mark's been in business, 5 or 6 years at least, right?
Yeah, they may already know. Right. But, there's a lot of things we don't know because we're in this bubble of making our show. And that's all we're focusing on. And I think that, the Real Green website, the emails we get, the emails I send out, all those things help kind of bring us all on the same page.
And it's important what you're saying about governments, municipal, provincial, federal, whatever they are, how they work with the industry as well, and creating the infrastructure to support the sustainable mandate that we all have. We also work through Creative BC a lot with the music industry, and we support a lot of live music events. And I think certainly from the large festivals that we see, who are leaving negative footprints often if they'd had a festival, the trash left or destroying the land or whatever it was, that there's now a mantra of leave it actually better than how you found it. And I think, Hans, you're seeing that from the locations kind of perspective as well when you're dealing with
Well, that's-
certainly government properties and lands.
Yeah, I think that's always been the motto. Some people are better at it, but I also think that that's a part of the maturity of the department or our department. As time goes on, you find yourself asking just those additional questions because you've got the general sense of how it's all going to unfold. So you can anticipate what the impact's going to be, what the damage might be, how to mitigate it, how to put protective equipment down. I mean, in the last few years, we've seen like plywood use is a huge thing that we had for years and years. We have huge lighting lifts, a lot of traffic going on to grass or whatever it is. We would lay plywood down. In the last few years, we've seen sumo decks and big chunks of stuff that we have to carry to lay down. But the stuff is reusable. It's not just one use. You know, plywood would get crushed by a lift and it's garbage, and that's not the case anymore. So people are asking themselves those questions. Can I tie into this house? Can I tie into this building and get rid of a generator, get rid of that much more fuel consumption because the generator is powering that much more light? But it does take time, and it's a conversation. And absolutely, I would go back to the jurisdictions and all the authorities that are becoming so much more aware of how we operate, and that helps us have those questions in our initial conversation.
I think we do have a few minutes for questions, but before we, can you just give me a time? I don't know if I watched 2 minutes. Does that include the questions? Plus the questions? Okay. We'll get 1 second. I just have one quick sort of, as we go around, if there's one frustration that you're continually dealing with, but you think that we can all, through Real Green and through other initiatives, come together and quickly address that you haven't already talked about. Is there anything that anybody wants to put on the table?
No, actually, I think I've said my piece. Unless someone's got some question that's going to bring back the double-headed hydra or something.
Yeah.
I'd like to second the idea of the studios sharing their information and making sure that when we kick off, we get a full package of kind of what the standard will be and a uniform, measurable. That would be great to have that to kick off every time.
Again, the communication. I mean, we talked about on our pre-phone call, we talked about the city having a list of suppliers that are willing to go the extra green step and make sure that we're all using and encouraging and supporting the people who are trying to make a difference.
I don't know that I have a beef, or a particular thing,
Or
but
a
I'd like
a
to
non-beef.
a non-beef, yeah. But I would, if I was going to ask for anything, it would be to engage our senior management a little bit more locally. That is because they are the ones I feel like they can, just like Claire is like the best ambassador in the world for this. But I think we need more Claras and less people that don't want to make that shift or just accept that they've got to just take a suggestion, just take the time to think about what we're asking, because we're not doing it to make our lives any easier. It's not going to make our lives easier.
Did you want anything? Okay. So we do have time for a couple of questions over here. Yeah.
Oh yeah, thanks very much everyone for doing this panel. This is fantastic. Really appreciate hearing all these great things we can do. I'm a producer for an emerging production company called Trembling Bird Studios. I'm a co-producer with a thing called the Crazy Eights, and I teach at a film school, production classes. And the reason why I bring this up is because we talked about the low-budget indie stuff, and Clara, you mentioned that indie sets are just naturally sustainable. The problem is that we are competing when we're making features for 100,000, couple 100,000. When we go to the sales markets, we're still competing with the same, with much larger budget films in terms of acquisitions. It also matters because these are the sets, these are the productions where people are learning. So habits are being formed. They're seeing the leadership already at that point, and they're developing ways that in their brains and saying, well, this is how you make films, right? But a couple of examples I want to bring up. One is going paperless is a fantastic idea, and then every show that we start, we say, yeah, let's go paperless, let's go paperless. And then it's like, well, we're shooting this remote area. Well, then, okay, well, maybe we have Circus, maybe we have Shot Lister from Zach and Dan, but do we provide Wi-Fi for our crew? Does that mean we don't have call sheets that day? then we're into the issue of lost productivity. The recycling thing, I know it seems very trivial, but to separate recycling from garbage may actually, we've been encountering labor hours that in a small indie production is actually untenable. I know it sounds ridiculous to say, and I know that we say, well, guys, let's just do it. But I mean, it's a 12-hour shooting day, or driving out to Line Lane back. I mean, these are real issues. The green generators that we keep saying, they cost more to rent than do gas generators. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, at Creative BC and anybody else here in the room, well, what resources and tools exist for emerging low-budget indie filmmakers? And if there are not, Prime, I'd love to challenge Creative BC to create resources for indie filmmakers who wants to do this, because we all want to do this, trust me. But sometimes it is actually, like you said, financially challenging. Creative BC, maybe it's a thing where you can negotiate a thing with the BC government to add an extra tax incentive to the rebate to if we can actually go green.
Yeah, no, all excellent and valid points, and it's something that certainly we think about as an organization and are in conversations with various levels of government on a daily basis, because we are talking about a very different tiered industry, and there's all kinds of things going on, and working with the guilds and the associations certainly is part of that driving. So that is something that we've, I think, through some of the real green training that we've been doing with Zena and Julie, that there are filmmakers from all levels of the industry or different budget levels who are coming in and talking about these things. So I think becoming part of this community will help drive some of this stuff forward. So does anybody else want to add anything?
I would just say, like, you don't have to feel like you've got the entire burden on your shoulders as a producer too. I mean, I think that Claire is probably an exception, but there are lots of people out there that do small things, and every little small thing is going to be of benefit. I mean, if you just decided we're not going to do beef on this show, that's already like, that's the 1%, the other 19%, you're just superhuman, so you did it all. But there are lots of 1%ers out there that are just saying, this is the one thing that I'm going to latch onto, and I'm going to say, we're not going to consume anything that's not water, and we're not going to do it in water bottles. We're just going to do it out of jugs. That's what we're doing on this little independent film. If anyone's got an argument for that, they can just talk to me. I'm the producer, so I'm telling you that that's all we're drinking here. It's enough. Yeah. Humans can just survive on water.
We also, the beef thing I kind of did by myself, because I just thought, as did everybody else, I thought that the crew would revolt. I didn't really feel like dealing with 100 people who were yelling at me. I didn't do Meatless Mondays. I didn't make a point of it. I just went to the caterer and said, how much beef did you buy last week? And they said 150 pounds. And I said, great, next week make it 50, and saved 100 pounds. And then I didn't even tell anyone about that, I think, for 2 years. I did it for 2 years on my shows. And then finally somebody was saying, oh, I really like this food. And I said, well, we're not really serving. And they went, oh, that's awesome. And I'm like, oh, okay. So on this show, on Magicians, I walked in and I said, how do we do this? I said to every single person, engage, put it, all ideas welcome all the time. And like Hans was saying, your crew wants to do this, right? So maybe it's, somebody will volunteer and say, hey, you know what? I'm right beside the reuse facility. I'll take the recycling in. It's not going to cost you an extra hour of labor, Or you're going to go to Portable Electric and you're going to say, I'm going to make my entire movie off electricity. You can advertise that. Give me the generator. And they'll give it to you. So I think that, or I hope they'll give it to you. But what was really encouraging was that everybody stepped up. It wasn't, even, you should see some of the guys who come in and we have this lovely, one of our drivers who came in, and he has to drive us all around in the van when we talk about this. And he came in the other day and he said, I've lost 20 pounds. My wife thinks I look amazing. This is great. I've never felt this. I haven't had this much energy before. People feel healthier. They feel better about it, and they want to help. So it's not all on you. It's not all on me. It's like all of us. There's 60,000 of us. We all have to do this, to the maximum ability that we can.
Yes, well said, Clara.